Are you a new business owner who is interested in doing the copywriting and content marketing yourself? I have incredible books for you coming up next. Welcome back to the Intrepid Emma YouTube channel, where we talk about copywriting, content marketing, and entrepreneurship. If that is something you're excited about, then please subscribe to the channel and hit that little notification bell so you don't miss a single video. Alright, so today's video is going to be super casual and probably pretty quick. I'm going to give you some essential reading that you would want to start with if you're really interested in copywriting or content marketing. And to be honest, a lot of brand storytelling in general, which is an important part, in my opinion, of both copy and content, because it's all about how you connect to your ideal customer, where they come into your company, how your business supports them, what their journey is. It's really, really exciting. So that means we're going to start with the most obvious brand storytelling book that is out there, and that is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. So for a bit of context, Donald Miller has helped more than 3,000 businesses clarify their marketing messages so companies grow. That's really the essence of story brand, is making sure that you clearly explain what your business does. And I would say one of the biggest takeaways as well from this book is to realize that in your copy, in your content, whenever you engage with your ideal client, they are the hero of the story of this brand, right? Even if you're a solopreneur and it's really based a lot on your journey and all the learnings you have, depending on your archetype, maybe you're a ruler or you're a sage and people really look to you for inspiration or for a plan or for knowledge, still, they are the hero of the brand story. You are their guide. That is the really key learning, I would say, comes out of this. Now, of course, some other things in the book, the 7 universal story points all humans respond to, the real reason customers make purchases, how to simplify a brand message so people understand and act on it, meaning they'll actually buy, and how to create the most effective messaging for websites, brochures, and social media. Absolutely essential information, of course. And if you love story, especially if you're like me and you really love writing, and maybe your business is copywriting, you're trying to learn how to do copywriting, or maybe you just really want to do a lot of that writing yourself because you enjoy that creative process, even though you have a totally different business, maybe you're a jewelry designer or a photographer, this is a great basic book to start with. Like, basic in the sense that it sets the foundation for everything. And out of the ones I'm going to talk about today, this is actually probably the most obviously marketing related one. A lot of the other ones are about storytelling more broadly. So if you want the essential learning on how to tell a brand story, right, it would be Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Really highly recommend. All right, I've actually gone and grabbed another book, which is also related to brand storytelling and marketing, and it's called The Hero and the Outlaw: Building Extraordinary Brands Through the Power of Archetypes. So this is more of a branding and brand strategy book, but as a copywriter and content marketer, I care deeply about archetypes. I find them to be an extremely helpful framework, especially when I'm getting to know another brand. It kind of gives me a little bit of a shortcut into their psychology and their relationship with their ideal clients. But in general, I find that archetypes can help the brand itself really reflect on, oh, these are our core values. This is a message that I didn't realize was kind of subconsciously coming out in our marketing, and we really need to intensify that because that really expresses what we want to express in the world, and it's connecting with our ideal clients. Like, it gives you a lot of clarity and brings to consciousness things that are unconscious in the stories that exist all over the world, because really archetypes, and we can do a whole separate video about this, but archetypes are something that appears universally across cultures, across times, in large cultural groups, societies, as well as on an individual level. So I find them extremely helpful for branding and marketing, but also for really, especially if you're a small business owner, how you approach your entire business, and helps you learn more about yourself as an individual. It's really, really fun. So The Hero and the Outlaw. Let me give you a little bit of insight into the book. So some brands are so extraordinary that they become larger than life, symbolic of entire cultures, admired by consumers the world over. All right, so how can you become admired by consumers all the world over? It's by creating a really recognizable brand. So I would recommend that this book for anybody who is just trying to figure out what their brand voice is. If you are looking to be a content writer or a copywriter and learn how to shortcut your connection to the brands that you're writing for. It can be really helpful shorthand. A lot of big brands as well will be very much aware of their archetype, and they can probably share a lot of branding information with you. So it's important that you know what it is, so that way you're able to connect with them on that more advanced marketing level. I would say that it's really fun as well. So if you're just kind of curious about who you are as a person, there are other books on archetypes that are really focused on that. It's a great book as well if you're a small business owner who is learning more about themselves and showing up in your brand. So how are you influencing your brand? Because as a solopreneur, in a lot of ways, your brand is you, but it's not exactly you. You're really highlighting the parts of you that come out in your brand. So you might be a really well-rounded person, but in your jewelry design company, you're really going to focus on maybe the creator aspect, right? Because you're being very creative. Maybe the magician aspect, if people put on your jewelry and they feel like they're elevated and now they're a transformed human, right? So important to look at so you can really see the nuances, and generally it's easier if you stick to one dominant archetype, but you're definitely free to recognize the kind of subtypes that you have within you that could really set you apart in your industry. So for example, if you're a coach, there's a lot of magician coaches, a lot of caregiver coaches, but you might be able to leverage sort of a second archetype that you have to set yourself apart. So maybe you're a magician, but maybe you're also the innocent archetype. So you approach things with this bubbly joy, this very wholesome attitude. Maybe it's a little different than someone who's more rebellious and cutting edge in the coaching industry, right? So the general archetypes, actually, let me tell you what the archetypes are because it might pique your interest so you grab the book. They are the innocent, the explorer, the sage, the hero, the outlaw, the magician, the regular guy / gal, also known as the everyman or everywoman, the lover, the jester, the caregiver, the creator, and the ruler. So if any of those words kind of intrigued you, definitely pick up this book, The Hero and the Outlaw. Hugely recommend. And also, if you're curious about the author, it's Carol Pearson and Margaret Mark. So Carol Pearson has spent 30 years developing systematic psychological frameworks and applying them in business and educational settings. That's fascinating. And Margaret Mark is the strategist behind many of today's most enduring and successful brands, from AT&T and Kraft Foods to General Motors and Madison Square Garden. Together, they've created the first systematic methodology for leveraging archetypal meanings to build successful brands. Very, very powerful work. Now, the next couple books I'm going to talk about are all variants on brand storytelling, and they're very deeply tied to archetypes. So they really come back to this idea that we have a collective consciousness, right? So that there are stories that show up again and again, culture to culture, and every time it's expressed, it's a little bit different because we are all unique individuals. Our characters hopefully are well developed and super unique when we're talking about fiction, but there really are storylines that repeat and that are inherently compelling. We don't get bored of them. They're not cliche, they're not dull, and they're really, really exciting. They resonate on a really emotional, deep level because they are our universal stories. So there are 3 books that are based on this concept. So it all comes from this idea of a monomyth. There was a man named Joseph Campbell, who you may have heard of before, who talked about the hero with 1,000 faces, and who really said that there was this hero's journey that shows up culture to culture in mythology and individual lives. And typically, historically, it was seen as a very male journey, which is why we're going to go into a couple variants on the monomyth. But essentially, anyone, absolutely anyone, of course, can be a hero. We know this, especially now in the 21st century. We're super aware now that people have the opportunity, hopefully, to be able to express their own hero's journey. And your customer, again, remember from StoryBrand, they are the hero of the journey, also is the hero of your brand story. But also, I think it's helpful when you're writing like an about page or you're telling your story in maybe a podcast interview to be able to tell the story of your hero's journey as well, especially if your ideal client will see themselves reflected in it. Again, another topic for another day, but here are some great books on how to start. So this is called The Writer's Journey. It is Mythic Structure for Writers by Christopher Vogler, or Vogler, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. So Christopher Vogler is a veteran story consultant for major Hollywood film companies and a respected teacher of filmmakers and writers around the globe. He's influenced the stories of movies from The Lion King to Fight Club to The Thin Red Line. So really, really general in a sense. Like, this is very much for the fiction writer, for Hollywood screenwriters, but it's the hero story. It's just explained really well for anyone who does writing. So it goes into, let me share a little bit from the table of contents so you kind of know how it works. So book 1, so part 1 is about mapping the journey. So you learn about archetypes. You learn about the different people that come across your hero's path. Book 2, part 2, is the stages of the journey. So this is traditionally seen in a circle because a hero starts in an ordinary world, leaves the ordinary world, maybe he goes on a mission to Mordor, like in Lord of the Rings, and is transformed by the journey and eventually comes back to the ordinary world, to their home, but they've transformed through the journey, which is why it's so compelling. So book 2, or part 2, goes through all the different stages of that circular journey. And the epilogue is looking back on the journey. So highly recommend if you are into creative writing especially, but I find this extremely helpful for all brand storytelling as well, like in a marketing sense. So this is a very thick book. I would make it, it's very easy to read. There's a lot of actual imagery in it as well. Some beautiful, beautiful imagery. This is the ordeal, which is a moment in the hero's journey. And it's broken down really, really well. So there's tons of subheadings in it. It's very, very readable, but it is big. So consider if this is where you want to start, especially if you're into creative writing, I would recommend getting it. But if you're very much focusing on the practical marketing aspects of brand storytelling or storytelling in general, then I would pick one of the previous 2 books. And then, like I mentioned, we also have realized that there's more than just the traditional male hero's journey. And again, women go on that same journey multiple times through our lives, but there are some really important contributions to this conversation that have been made by a couple of important women particularly. So there is The Virgin's Promise. This is a book I own. I'm also waiting for the next book. I ordered it. I haven't read it yet, but this is one that I have read that is about the heroine's or female journey, basically the traditionally female journey, but anyone can go on this journey 100%. It really is more internal, whereas the hero's journey is more external, where they're physically moving in the world. Maybe they're physically leaving their ordinary world. And in The Virgin's Promise, it's more of an internal transformation. And you actually, this is really powerful because often you end up changing the world around you. The hero leaves his ordinary world and changes himself and then comes back to the ordinary world. And in The Virgin's Promise, generally the person, traditionally female, but whoever it is, has an internal transformation that forces the outer world to transform as well. Very, very powerful. This is particularly good in brand storytelling, I would say, if you've discovered something about yourself and that is relevant to the journey, right? So maybe you didn't go to, I don't know, maybe you didn't go to university and you learned through experience. Maybe you just worked in the family business and somehow you really changed it. You transformed it from the inside with your unique approach. That would be a great time to look at The Virgin's Promise as a great structure because there's a lot of similarity, right? The second book I'm going to talk about the more traditional female journey is actually called The Heroine's Journey, and in many ways it's that circular structure. Again, there's some points on it that are the same as the hero's journey, but it's more internal as well. And this is a really great place to start because it's a very thin book. So if you're looking for a complement, that's why I started with these 2 myself. They go super well together because you can actually layer it. If you're a really great fiction writer, you can layer some of these aspects together and come up with a really profound book where you see the hero or the heroine change internally and also change their world by layering it together. So anyway, that's a long preface, but The Virgin's Promise is writing stories of feminine, creative, spiritual, and sexual awakening, and it's by Kim Hudson. So it says here, Kim Hudson's personal journey and scholarly inquiry combine to develop this theory of the virgin archetypal structure. Over the past 4 years, Kim has given workshops and classes in the Vancouver area on The Virgin's Promise. Very cool, also very relevant for fiction writers and Hollywood screenwriters or aspiring screenwriters. And I would say the things that really set this apart are, so there is some archetypal theory again, so that comes in common. And there is an archetypal journey, but some pieces that are really different from the hero's journey are, for example, because it's an internal transformation, there might be a secret world. Rather than a special world where you're going off to Mordor, maybe there's a secret world where you're exploring this new skill that you're trying to establish and accomplish. And once it's accidentally revealed, you have to face it and you have to face the consequences of the external world. We can definitely go into each of these journeys in more depth in future videos, but I would really recommend checking them out in tandem, looking at them together, seeing which one resonates more with your personal journey for the about page, and then also which of them is relevant for your ideal client. What kind of journey do they go on? Are they really transforming their entire lives from the outside in, which is the hero's journey, or are they making changes internally in themselves that eventually will make an impact on their outer world, but they're changing maybe their thought patterns? This is really, really relevant perhaps if you're a therapist or a coach, really changing from the inside out. That would be where the Virgin's Promise comes in. The third book that I would say goes really well with the Virgin's Promise and the writer's or hero's journey is by Maureen Murdock, and it's called The Heroine's Journey. I don't actually have a copy of the book yet. It's currently in the mail coming to me because this is going to be new, something I'm really exploring in more depth. But you can definitely go check out Maureen Murdock's book or start via the internet. There's some really great women writers out there who will talk about this traditionally female journey. Again, it's totally more of the internal journey, but it was traditionally seen as a woman's journey in the world. And that's because it really talks about dichotomies and masculine energy and feminine energy, or what's typically associated with those things. So this is really great if you're really interested in psychology, but it can be great for anyone who wants to have a more, maybe being a woman or identifying as a woman is a really important part of the work that you're doing. It would make a lot of sense for you to explore the heroine's journey first rather than the hero's journey. And consider if there's a big split in your life, or when speaking about your about page, or if there's a big split in the life of your ideal client, because it really is about, there's this separation from the feminine that happens early on, and the heroine dives into the traditionally masculine. So it's really extreme, the flip. And then there's usually, there's some steps along the way, but basically they need to reintegrate both sides, the masculine and feminine. So they need to re-embrace the feminine and then find a way to mesh them both, and they're a more whole human being. So if you're really into psychology or you're really into spirituality, this book also will probably really resonate with you because of the language that's used. And I will definitely give an update, and I would be happy to do a full review of any of these books, but especially this book because it's going to be one that I'm reading really, really soon. If you ask for it in the comments below, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in, and I can go in more depth. Alright, if you made it this far in your future book haul, then remember you can pick up any of the books I mentioned in the description down below. You'll have links to all of the books, and I would love to hear if you've read these books yourselves. What were your thoughts? Alright, thank you so much for joining me. Remember, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd love to learn more about copywriting, content marketing, and entrepreneurship for your small business, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss another video. Alright, I will see you again soon. Thank you so much for joining me today.